My son told me to stop being a parasite. We were in my kitchen. I had paid for that kitchen. I had paid for him for 32 years. And I did not cry. I laughed. Because he was using his father's words. And he didn't know it. Welcome back. If you have ever been made to feel small in a house you paid for, stay with me. This one is for you. Comment where you're listening from. And subscribe so you don't miss the ending. It was the second Sunday in August, in Mesa, Arizona, and it had been 108 degrees at 4 o'clock. I had made lemon roast chicken because it was the only thing Doug ever asked for twice. And 2 years after burying him, I still cooked for a man who was not coming to the table. Brynn cut into hers and set her fork down. "It's a little dry," she said, not cruelly. That is the part people forget. She said it the way you would mention rain. "Then you cook tomorrow," I said. "I'd like a night off." I want you to understand how ordinary that was. I said it in the voice I used to use in budget meetings at the hospital. Back when I ran an accounting department and nobody thought twice about me having an opinion. Grady put both hands flat on the table. "Are you serious right now? You sit in this house all day. Stop being a parasite and contribute something." There were 3 seconds after that. I have thought about those 3 seconds more than I have thought about anything else since. What I felt was not pain. I want to be honest with you, because honesty is why you came. It was recognition. The kind you get when a song comes on in a grocery store and your body knows it before your mind does. I had heard that sentence before, in that kitchen, from a different man. I will tell you where, but not yet, because I did not let myself know it fully that night either. So I laughed. It was not a small laugh. It came up out of me like something that had been folded in a drawer for 30 years and had finally been shaken out. Brynn set her wine glass down so carefully that it made no sound. Grady's ears went red the way they did when he was 9 and got caught. "What is funny?" he said. It was not a question. I picked up my napkin, folded it, and laid it beside my plate. 30 days, I said. "You will get it in writing. I don't do things verbally anymore," Brynn said. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That is a problem for 2 employed adults," I said. 8 months earlier, I had put that house key into his hand myself. I am not going to list for you what those 8 months were. I know it is what you are waiting for, the laundry, the groceries, the wine that disappeared, the friends who arrived without asking. I could give you all of it, and you would be on my side by the second item. But I am not going to recite my own life to you like a grievance. I wrote all of it down, every line, every date, every dollar. I will show you later. They sat at that table and argued at me for a while. I do not remember most of it. What I remember is that my son used the word crazy twice, and that Brynn said nothing at all after the first minute, which I should have paid more attention to than I did. I carried my plate to the sink. The radio on the windowsill was still going, a station out of Phoenix that plays songs from before I was married. I had turned it on the week after Doug's funeral, because the house made a sound at night that I could not stand, not a noise, the opposite of one, and I had never turned it off, not once in 2 years. It played through Christmas, it played while they moved in, it played while my son called me a parasite. I rinsed the plate. I did not turn the radio off. Behind me, Grady said. "Mom, stop acting like this," I said. "The part you should be worried about is not the 30 days. It is that I let it go 8 months. Then I went upstairs. That night I did not sleep. I did arithmetic. It is the only thing that has ever calmed me down. The post office in my part of Mesa opens at 6. I was the second person in line, holding an envelope I had typed at 4 in the morning while the coffee went cold beside me. 30 days written notice, both their names on it. Printed the way you print names on something that might one day be read out loud by somebody else. Grady Hallowell, Brynn Cottrell. The address I mailed it to was my own. The clerk asked if I wanted it certified. I said yes, and return receipt. And she slid a small green card across the counter for me to fill out. $9.15. I remember because I paid in cash and counted the change into my palm, like a woman who had never had to count change in her life. I did not tell them. I did not tell anyone. When I got home, I put the receipt in the second drawer of my desk. Underneath the manual for an oven, I replaced in 2011. If you are wondering why a person keeps an oven manual for 15 years, it is because that drawer is where I put the things I am not finished with. There was one other stop I made that morning. I will get to it. Now let me tell you about Ophelia. Ophelia Ruiz cleaned my house for 11 years, Tuesdays and Fridays. She knew which cabinet the good glasses were in before I did. When Doug was sick, she came on Wednesdays as well, and never once put it on an invoice. And when I tried to pay her for it, she looked at me the way you look at someone speaking a language you do not have. 8 months ago, 3 weeks after they moved in, Brynn told me she could not concentrate on her calls with a stranger in the house. That was the word she used, stranger. And my son said, "We'll pick up the slack, Mom. There's 2 of us here now." I let Ophelia go that Friday. I paid her 8 weeks forward, because I could, and because I was ashamed. She folded the check without looking at it and put it in her bag. She said, "You call me when you need me. I'll come back the same day." Then she went out to her car, and I stood in my own front hall and understood that I had just let go of the only person in that house who had ever thanked me for anything. Nobody picked up any slack, not one Tuesday, not one Friday. I lasted 6 weeks before I bought the notebook. It was a blue composition book from the drugstore on Southern Avenue, $2.99, the kind children carry to school. I did not buy it to build a case against my son, and I need you to believe that. I bought it because I ran an accounting department for 9 years. And there is a part of me that cannot watch money leave a room without writing down where it went. First entry, September, groceries, $141. Underneath it, I wrote 4 words. They did not offer. So that is what I was carrying on the Monday morning after my son called me a parasite. I made 1 cup of coffee. The machine on my counter makes 3. It has made 3 every morning for 22 months. And every morning I have poured out what nobody drank. That Monday I made 1 cup, carried it to the back patio, and sat in the shade until the heat came up over the block wall. 40 minutes. I did not cook. I did not plan a meal. I sat. At 7:30, Brynn opened the patio door. "Corinne, is there breakfast?" I said. "The kitchen is behind you." She stood there long enough for me to hear the air conditioning cycle on. Then the door closed. Grady came out 20 minutes later, holding his phone at arm's length as though it had bitten him. "The Wi-Fi isn't working." I changed the password. Why? Because the account is in my name. It comes off my card, and internet is not a utility. It is a subscription, the same as a magazine. He looked at me for a while. "You're being petty." I did not argue. Arguing is what I had done for 8 months, and it had cost me 8 months. I went inside, opened the blue notebook, and wrote 1 more line. He thought I was punishing him. I was only balancing an account that had been open since January. He changed tactics on the Wednesday. I want to be precise about this, because it is the part people miss. He did not get louder. He got warmer. He started calling me Mom in every sentence, the way salesmen use your first name. He asked whether I had been sleeping. He asked when my next appointment was and said he could drive me. He carried in the water softener salt without being asked, once, and mentioned it twice. I ran an accounting department for 9 years. I have sat across a table from a great many people who became extremely pleasant right before they asked me to move a number. So I waited. On Thursday night, I was in the laundry room folding my own things, and the vent in that room carries sound from the guest bedroom the way a tin can on a string carries a voice. Doug and I discovered that when Grady was 14, we never told him. I heard my son say, "She's scared, that's all. Give it 3 weeks. She'll ask us to stay." And Brynn said, "You're sure?" She's 61 and she's alone in 4 bedrooms. Where's she going to put all that fear? On us. It's fine. Let her have her month. I stood there holding one of my own towels. Understand what that was? He had not decided I was wrong. He had decided I was frightened. And that frightened was something a man could simply wait out. He was not entirely mistaken about the fear. That is what made it unbearable. He had only guessed the wrong reason for it. The note appeared on the refrigerator on Saturday morning. In purple marker, "Girls coming at 11. Please stay out of the great room." I read it twice. Then I read it a 3rd time, standing in my kitchen, in the house my husband and I bought in 1994, in the room where I have wrapped every Christmas present of my adult life. I did not take it down. I did not say one word about it. I had been meaning to replace the thermostat since the previous summer. It was still in its box in the hall closet, the kind you program from your phone. Installing it took 19 minutes. Setting a passcode took 4. I set the house to 85 degrees. Then I drove to a spa on Baseline and had a massage, which I had not done in 2 years, since before Doug got sick. It was 108 degrees outside when I parked. Somewhere in the second half of that hour, face down on the table, I opened the app on my phone, 91 degrees inside the house. I turned the screen off and put my face back in the cradle. At 4 o'clock, I pulled into my own driveway, and my son was standing in it. Are you kidding me? The air conditioning quit. 6 people were sweating in there. Brynn was mortified. I locked the car. "I did not embarrass Brynn," I said. Brynn embarrassed herself when she invited 6 women into my house and left me a note about which rooms I was allowed to sit in. I walked past him. He called after me. "You can't just do stuff like this," I said. "I own the house, Grady. That is exactly what it means." Inside, the great room still smelled like somebody else's perfume. 6 glasses on the coffee table. I cleaned it up because I did not want to look at it in the morning. And while I was doing it, I noticed something I had been noticing for months without ever noticing it. Brynn buys white trash bags. Never black, white, the expensive kind. 3 times the price of the box I have bought for 30 years. And she changes the liner when it is half full. I had watched her do it since January and had never once asked her why. And it did not occur to me to ask that night either. I wrote it in the notebook anyway. Not the cost, only the fact. Winnie called at 9. Winnie Boland and I ran payroll together at the hospital for 6 years, and she has never softened anything for me in her life. I told her about the note. I told her about the thermostat. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Corinne, you raised him for 32 years. What exactly do you still owe him?" I said that I did not know. She said, "That's the wrong answer. It's also the honest one." 21 days left. He still thought it was a mood. My garage holds 2 cars. For 8 months it held 1, and it was not mine. The Chevelle is a 1970 sport coupe, the color of a green apple where the primer stops. Grady has been restoring it since before he was married. When they moved in, he asked to keep it inside just until spring. And I said yes, the way I said yes to everything that year. By March, his tools covered the workbench Doug built. By June, there were parts stacked along the wall where I keep the Christmas boxes. There is an oil stain on that concrete in the shape of Nevada. I parked in the driveway in Arizona in July. If you have never done that, here is what it is. You keep a towel over the wheel. And if you forget, you drive the first half mile holding it with 2 fingers at the bottom, and it still burns. I did that for 8 months and never mentioned it once. On the Tuesday, I called a place on Wrecker Road and rented a storage unit. Climate-controlled, $214 a month. And I paid 3 months in advance, $642 of my money. Then I hired a flatbed, not a hook, a flatbed, because you do not drag a car like that by the frame. I watched the door come down, and I turned the key myself. Grady got home at 6. The garage was closed, and my sedan was inside it. I handed him the storage key before he could start. Your registration lapsed in March, I said. Your policy is storage only. If that car sits on a public street in this association, the city tows it inside 48 hours. The impound is $35 a day, and your insurance covers none of it. The unit is on Wrecker, climate-controlled. I paid 3 months. After that, it is yours. He stood in my driveway, holding a key to a building he had never seen, and he did not say anything at all. That was the first moment he understood I knew more about his car than he did. Across the street, Hank Dorsey was watering the strip of grass he refuses to give up. He looked over. He nodded at me once, the way men of that generation nod, and then he went inside and left us to it. He has lived across from me for 22 years, and he has never once asked a question he did not need the answer to. That was Tuesday. Thursday, at 2 in the morning. I came down for water, and Brynn was sitting at the island in the dark with her laptop open. She was not packing. She was looking at rental listings and doing arithmetic on an envelope, and she was crying very quietly, the way people cry when they have had practice. I sat down on the stool beside her. I did not say anything. I am not good at that. I did it anyway. After about 4 minutes, she said, "We got evicted when I was 12. Tucson." I waited. My mom put our things in black trash bags because there wasn't time to get boxes. They set it all out by the carport. And we sat on the curb for 3 hours, waiting for my aunt to drive down from Marana. She wiped her face with her wrist. "I don't buy black bags. I never have. You probably noticed." I said that I had noticed. I did not say that I had written it down. I want to be honest about what I felt at that island, because it matters later. I felt sorry for her. Not politely. Actually, I went upstairs at 2:30, thinking there had to be a way to get her out of my house without putting her back on a curb. Then I lay in the dark and finally finished the thing I had started at the dinner table. 1994, I had been home 3 years. I asked Doug for $3,000 to sit my license exam again, because certification lapses, and I wanted mine back, he said. "For what? You don't contribute anything as it is." I never took the exam. I never told a living soul. My CPA certificate has been face down in that bedroom closet for 32 years, under the extra blankets. My son did not invent that sentence. He inherited it, and I had spent 32 years pretending I had never heard it. 16 days left. I went to sleep thinking I could still save all 3 of us. The next 3 days were the quietest of the whole 8 months. Brynn cooked, twice, real dinners, one with a salad. Grady washed up both nights without being asked, and put things back in roughly the right cabinets. I am not proud of what I am about to tell you. It worked. On the second night, I sat at that table and thought, maybe this is it. Maybe the notice did what 8 months of talking never did. I did not write in the notebook for 3 days. That is how close it came. Here is what was actually happening, which I did not learn until much later. On the Monday, a letter came for me from the firm that manages my accounts. Brynn brought the mail in. She opened it, standing at the counter. The way you open something you assume is an advertisement. And by the time she understood, it was not addressed to her. She had read it. It was a confirmation of a pledge. $50,000 over 3 years to an organization here in Mesa called Sunrise Way. Sunrise Way pays people's rent. That is all they do. When a family is 60 days behind and the notice is already on the door, Sunrise Way pays the landlord directly so that the family stays where it is. I had been giving them money quietly for 4 years. Doug chose them. It was the last check he ever wrote by hand. Brynn did not show that letter to my son. She held on to it for 3 days. She cooked dinner. She washed the salad. She sat across from me and asked how my back was. And she did arithmetic, the way I do it, the way I taught myself at 19, because she is far more like me than either of us would ever have said out loud. I want you to sit with the shape of this. A woman who was put out on a curb at 12 years old learned that her mother-in-law had spent 4 years quietly paying to keep other people's children off that same curb. And her first move was to work out how much of it she could get. On Thursday, she made me tea. She had never made me tea in her life. "Corinne," she said, "can I say something? What if you sold us the house, or gave it to us early? It's going to be Grady's anyway. We'd finish the basement for you, properly, with a bathroom. It's cooler down there in the summer. You'd have your own entrance." I set the cup down. I did it slowly, because my hand was not steady, and I did not want her to see that. I thought about 2 in the morning. The laptop, the envelope with the numbers on the back, the white bags. Then I said, "Brynn, you were 12 years old, standing in a parking lot. I understand that better than you think I do." She started to say something. "But you have just tried to move a 61-year-old woman into her own basement so that you would never have to stand in a parking lot again. Do you hear it? I need to know whether you can hear it." She did not answer me. She got up and went to the stairs, but she left the letter on the table, face up, squared to the edge, and she did not leave it there by accident. I want to be clear about the next part, because people always ask me about it. I did not take the 30 days away from her. I could not. And I already knew that I could not. And there is a piece of paper in my desk drawer that explains exactly why. What I said was this: 30 days is still 30 days. But the thing I was going to hand you on day 30, that is gone now. She stopped on the 3rd stair. She did not turn around. Then Grady came down. He already knew. He had the letter in his hand before I saw him cross the room. And his voice was not angry, which was worse. $50,000, he said, to strangers, and you're throwing your own son out. He did not ask what Sunrise Way was. Not that night, not ever. He had read the whole letter, and the only number he took out of it was the one that had his name nowhere near it. I stood there and looked at my son, in my kitchen, holding my mail. That was the night I stopped trying to save all 3 of us. Now I will tell you about the other stop I made that Monday morning. After the post office, I drove to an office on Dobson Road and paid a woman named Priya Raghavan for an hour of her time. I had booked it at 11 o'clock the night my son called me a parasite. On my phone, sitting on the edge of my bed, she told me 3 things. The first was that Grady and Brynn were not guests. 8 months of living in a house, receiving mail there, keeping their belongings there, made them tenants. Whether or not they had ever paid me $1, and whether or not anything was written down. To make them leave, I would have to go through a court. The second was that the letter I had mailed that morning was valid. 30 days, in writing, delivered. She told me to keep the green card somewhere I would not lose it. The third was the one I needed. Do not shut off the power, she said. Do not shut off the water. Do not change the locks while their things are inside. If you do any of that, you are the one standing in front of a judge, and you will lose, and it will cost you far more than they are costing you now. I said that I understood. Then she said the sentence I have thought about every day since. You don't need to make the house unlivable. You only need to stop making it free. So that is what I did. Every single thing on this list is legal, and I checked each one twice. I took my son off my auto policy with 30 days' notice, exactly as required. He had to buy his own because of a speeding ticket last year. His premium came to $2,100 a year instead of the $900 I had been quietly paying. I closed the credit card, not his card, mine. He had been an authorized user on my account since he was 22, which meant that every month, 22 years of my perfect payment history was being copied onto his credit report like a signature he had never signed. I removed him. His score went from 738 to 651 in 11 days. I took him off the family phone plan. He opened his own account, and they asked him for a $300 deposit because of the score. I left the Wi-Fi as it was. I put a lock on the pantry because the pantry is mine, and because Brynn had been carrying bottles out of it to other people's houses for 8 months and telling them she had bought the wine herself. That is the whole list. No candles, no cold showers, nobody sweating in the dark. Grady found out about the credit score on a Wednesday. When the third apartment turned them down, he came home at 7. He did not shout. He came in through the laundry room, set his keys on the counter, sat down on the stool at the island, and said nothing at all for a very long time. I have watched my son be angry his whole life. I had never once watched him be quiet. He looked 33 years old. He had not looked 33 years old in this house a single day. He finally said, 22 years. Yes, you gave me 22 years of your credit, and I never knew I had it. You never asked what you had, I said. That was the whole problem, and it was never about money. He nodded. Then he went upstairs, and here is the part I need you to hear. Because people get this wrong about stories like mine, I did not enjoy it. People think revenge feels like winning. It does not. It feels like standing at the side of a pool watching somebody learn to swim in water you could reach into. Every second of it. Your arms know exactly what they were built for, and you keep them down. I went into the front room, picked up my phone, and found Ophelia's number. Because the house was filthy, and because I wanted to hear one kind voice inside it, I put the phone back down. Not yet. Not while they were still here, whatever was coming. I was going to finish it standing in a dirty house by myself. 7 days left. He had spent 8 months believing my money was a safety net. It had never been a net. It was a floor, and I had been standing on it alone. He came home on the Thursday looking like a man who had found something. 15 minutes, that is what a free consultation is. He had sat in his car on his lunch break and talked to a lawyer for 15 minutes, and he walked into my kitchen almost smiling. You can't evict me, Mom. I was rinsing a pan. I turned the water off. 8 months makes me a tenant. You need a court. That's a filing fee, and a hearing date, and 60 days minimum before anybody makes me do anything. You've been bluffing since August. Brynn was in the doorway behind him. She did not look like a woman who had found something. I dried my hands and hung the towel back on the oven door, because I have hung it there for 32 years, and I was not going to stop that night. Then I walked to my desk and opened the second drawer. I took out the oven manual. Underneath it was a small green card. I set it on the island in front of my son. "I know," I said. "I met with an attorney on the Monday after you called me a parasite. 8 in the morning. Her name is Priya Raghavan, and she told me everything you have just told me, except that she told me 11 days before you thought of it." He looked at the card. He did not touch it. "That is a return receipt. Certified mail. Look at the postmark." He looked at the postmark. "The 30 days started before you had finished being angry with me. When they run out, I do not have to start anything. I only have to finish it." He sat down. He did not decide to sit down. His body did it. Then I went back to the drawer and brought out the blue notebook. I opened it to the last page, and I read it to him out loud, the way I used to read a variance report to a board. "Rent, at what, a one-bedroom, on Wrecker goes for 8 months, $11,160. The increase in the electric, the water, and the gas, 1,520. Groceries, 4,320. Your auto insurance, 1,312. The internet and your phone line, 944. Things broken, things given away, things I replaced without mentioning it, 2,615, and 8 weeks of Ophelia's pay, which I put in her hand because you told me you would pick up the slack, 2,240. I closed the notebook. $24,111. Grady started to say something. "I am not asking you for a cent of it. I will never ask you for it. I am showing it to you because you called me a parasite. And in 8 months, you had never once looked at the number." Brynn had both hands over her mouth. Then I took out the last thing, which had been lying inside the back cover of that notebook since the second Sunday in August. A cashier's check, $18,000, made out to Grady Hallowell. On the memo line, in my handwriting, it said down payment gift. I turned it around so that he could see the date. I picked that up the morning of the dinner. It was in my cardigan pocket while you ate. I was going to slide it across the table after dessert. And I had a little speech ready about your father, and about how a person gets started. I let that sit there. You didn't make it to dessert. Nobody said anything. The refrigerator cycled on. That is the sound I remember from the largest moment of my life. A refrigerator. Then I asked him the only question that mattered. "If I hand you this right now, do you learn anything?" And my son looked at me. He was still looking at me 4 seconds later, then 6, then longer than that. I have replayed it many times, and I want to be fair to him. He was not calculating. He was trying to find the honest answer, could not find it, and the not finding took too long. So I tore it in half, then I put the halves together and tore it again. Brynn turned her face to the wall. Grady stood up and walked out of my kitchen. And I stayed where I was. I did not win anything that night. I was only finished. $18,000 is a number. What it cost me to tear it was not. Day 30 was a Tuesday. They started loading at 7 in the morning, because by 9 you cannot carry a box across a driveway in Mesa in September without stopping twice. I stayed in the kitchen. It was not a scene. That surprised me more than anything else that month. After all of it, the last day was 2 people carrying their things out to a truck while a third person made coffee she did not drink. Brynn packed in white bags. I stood at the sink and watched her carry them out, one in each hand, and I did not say a word about it. And I will be answering to myself for that silence for a while yet. I could have said something. I did not know what the something was. They left at 11:10. On the island were 2 house keys. No letter, no note, not one word on the back of an envelope. I want to tell you what those keys cost them, because I found out later, and because numbers are how I understand things. The apartment is a 1-bedroom, 14 miles from here, $14.95 a month, with a credit score of 651. The management company required a double deposit, $2,990, plus first month, $4,485, before anybody handed them a key. And here is the figure I have never been able to set down. In 8 months of paying no rent, no groceries, no utilities, no insurance, and no phone bill, my son and his wife had managed to save $5,240. 8 months. $5,240. That is not a moral failing. And I want to be careful there. Plenty of people cannot save. But they were not people who could not save. They were people who had never once had to find out what anything cost. I called Ophelia at 11:30. She said, "Today?" I said, "If you can." She was in my driveway at 2 o'clock, 11 years after she told me she would be. She walked the house first, the way she always did, room by room, not touching anything. She looked at the guest bedroom. She looked at the lock on the pantry. She looked at the kitchen for a long time. Then she turned around and looked at me. "You've lost weight. I can tell from your wrists. I always could." I had to go stand in the laundry room for a minute. My son had not noticed, not once. I did not see my son for 4 months. I heard 3 things about him. The first came over the fence. Hank Dorsey stopped me with his phone held out, and on it was a listing in the neighborhood group. A 1970 Chevelle Sport Coupe, $31,000. The photograph had been taken inside a storage unit on Wrecker Road, under a light I had paid for. Hank did not say anything about it. He held the phone out, and when I had looked at it long enough, he put it back in his pocket and went to move his hose. The second came from Ophelia, in about 9 words, on a Friday. Grady had called her to ask for the name of the plumber the family used to use. He did not ask about me. He did not ask her to pass anything along. He did not ask her for anything else at all. The third came in the mail in November. A card, not a letter, the kind you buy at a drugstore with nothing printed inside. 4 words, in my son's handwriting. I am still trying. No apology, no explanation, nothing about money. I put it in the second drawer of my desk, on top of the green card, and I did not answer it. In October, I pulled the carpet out of the guest bedroom myself, which took 2 days and most of my back. I painted the walls off-white. I put a long wooden table under the east window, because that room gets the good light from about 7 until 9. Winnie came over and stood in the doorway with her arms folded. "What are you going to do with it?" I said that I did not know. That was true. All I knew was that I wanted one room in my own house where I could set something down and it would still be there in the morning. 4 months later, somebody knocked. By then, I already knew who it was. And I already knew he had earned the door. He was thinner. That was the first thing. The second was his hands. He had washed them, but there was still a dark line under 2 of the nails. The kind you get from a shop and not from a keyboard. He had picked up Saturdays and Sundays at a place on Main. He said, "I owe you an apology. I said something to you in your own kitchen that I can't take back. I have thought about it every day since." 3 sentences. Not one of them started with the word, but. And I did not tell him it was all right. That is the part I want to set down carefully, because for 32 years, my job was to make the bad feelings stop within 4 seconds, and I had become very fast at it. I said, "Yes, you were." He blinked. He had come up my walk braced for absolution, the way you brace for a step that has always been there. Then I told him about his father. I told him about 1994 and the $3,000 and the exam I did not sit. I told him what Doug said, word for word, because I have had it word for 32 years. Grady put his hand over his mouth and kept it there. "You didn't invent that sentence," I said. "You inherited it. That is not the same as being forgiven for it. But it is the reason I laughed at that table instead of crying. And you deserve to know the laugh was never about you." Then he took an envelope out of his jacket and set it on the counter. $1,000 in cash, in 20s and 50s, banded the way you band it when you have been adding to it slowly. In the last week before they moved out, he had asked me to lend him $1,000. I had said no. It was the shortest conversation we had that entire month. "This is that 1,000, he said. "I'm not paying you back. You never gave it to me. It took 7 months. I brought it so you could see that it exists." I have been handed a great many things in my life. That is the only one I could not immediately find a shelf for. I pushed it back across the counter. "Open a savings account," I said. "Put it in for a child you don't have yet." He looked at it a moment. Then he picked it up and put it in his pocket. And he did not argue with me, which he has never once managed before. I asked about Brynn. He said they were seeing somebody once a week, $90. And it is the largest line in their budget after the rent. He said it flatly, the way you report a number you have looked at many times. Then he said she was not ready to sit in this kitchen yet. I said that I would wait. I meant it. I still mean it. He left at 4:30. I walked him to the door and I did not ask him to stay for dinner, and neither of us pretended that was cruel. That evening, I took my certificate out from under the blankets and turned it face up for the first time since 1994. I hung it on the wall of that off-white room, above the wooden table. The next morning, I put the 3-cup coffee maker in the donation box and bought one that makes a single cup. And then I stood in my kitchen and turned off the radio, 40 seconds. That is how long I stood in the silence before I understood that I was not afraid of it anymore. In January, I registered to sit my exam, not to go back to work, because in 1994, I was not allowed to. People keep asking me whether I won. I don't think that is the right word. I did not beat my son. I stopped disappearing so quietly that nobody noticed I was gone, including me. I raised him for 32 years. I gave him 30 days. And the 30 days taught him something the 32 years never could. I do not regret either number. If you have ever been the person holding a household together while everyone in it called that nothing, tell me in the comments. I read them. Was Corinne too hard on him? Or not hard enough? I want to know where you land. Subscribe for more stories about women who stopped apologizing. There is a new one every week.